Hi guys, welcome to section 2.4, parallel and perpendicular lines. So we want to first make sure that we understand what a parallel line, what a perpendicular line is, and then we want to determine whether two lines are parallel or perpendicular or neither. And then, of course, the next thing we want to do is be able to find the equations of those lines. And we will not be doing the last thing. We will not be solving number 5. So let me just get rid of that. And that is what we will be doing. All right, so let's talk about what a parallel line is. So two distinct non-vertical lines in the Cartesian plane are parallel if and only if they have the same slope. So that's a good mathematical definition, but it's not necessarily something that you would understand if you didn't understand the math words. So basically, think of two lines that never touch, something like railroad tracks. They have to stay parallel so that the train stays on the tracks, right? They can't get smaller, they can't come together at any point because there's a certain distance that they need to be apart. So no matter what that distance is, as long as they never touch, then they have to be parallel to each other, okay? And if they're parallel to each other, that means their slopes are the same. If either one of these slopes was different from the other, then at some point they would have to touch. So let's do some examples. So the first thing is we want to show that these two lines are parallel. So how would we show that these two lines are parallel? Well, if you were in my class, you would answer me, but since you're not, I'll answer you. First, we need to find out what the slopes are, right? So we start with, we know that y equals mx plus b, where m is equal to the slope. So here is my slope for this line. So I have one slope here, which is -2/3. Okay, so I'll just call this I'll call this y1. So I'll call this the first slope. Now for the second one, it's not in slope-intercept or point-slope form, so I have to first solve for y. So we're going to start with 4x plus 6y is equal to 12. This is actually called standard form. So hopefully this is slope-intercept because we are given this, we need the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, then we have point slope. And it's called that because if we're given a point and the slope, there would be my y point that I'm given. Here's the slope, and then I would be given x1 as well. So there's a point slope. And this is called standard form. Okay, so standard form always is in the form of ax plus by equals some constant. And the rules about A, B, and C are that A, B, and C must be integers. So that means they're whole numbers plus, positive, negative, or 0 must be integers. And A is greater than 1. A is greater than 1, yeah, because it can't be a fraction. So it's got to be greater than or equal to 1. So we have our equation in standard form, and it's hard to find the slope from this. So what I would do is I would first turn this into slope intercept, because it's pretty easy. I just want to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And I get 6y is equal to, and I'm going to flip this backwards because I want my slope to be first and my y-intercept to be second. And then I divide both sides by 6. And I get y equals negative. For 6, I can simplify to 2/3 x plus 2. So now I know that the slope of the second line is again equal to negative 2/3. So I have the same slope for both lines, so they must be parallel. I think there's only one R. Sorry about that. Let me at least try to spell correctly. Parallel. Okay, so that's it. We know they're parallel. We just want to find the slope of each. It's a lot easier to find the slope when it's not in standard form, so I would always convert it. Okay, next question. Let me erase that. Okay, so now we want to talk about perpendicular lines. And perpendicular lines actually are always going to make a 90-degree angle. All of these are 90-degree angles with each other. So they cross at 90-degree angles. And basically, we say that the slope of the first line is equal to the negative reciprocal means 1/, of the other line. And that's why they're saying that if we multiply them together, that it equals -1, because if I multiply here both sides by m2, then these would cancel and I would get m2 times m1, or m1 times n2 is equal to -1. I think the best thing to know is that if you have the slope of one line, then the line perpendicular, and we also have, here, let me just write it, I'll just abbreviate it. So I would write, if I wanted to write the slope of the perpendicular line, I would write it like this. Notice this looks like something that's perpendicular, right? Let me write it again. So I have a line that's like this and a line that's like this, and they meet at 90-degree angles. So that's another way to say the slope of the perpendicular line. And that is going to be equal to the negative reciprocal. And a lot of people like to think of it as the opposite. So if that helps you, that's fine. So if I have, let's say, for example, I have the slope of one line is equal to 2/3. The slope of the line perpendicular would be -3/2. So that's why a lot of times I hear students say the opposite, because the sign is different. The sign is the opposite and the numbers are the opposite. Whichever way you like, I don't care. I would say the negative reciprocal, but if that's not something that you would normally say, however you want to think about it is fine with me. Okay, so now let's see what our next question asks. So we have, let me just get my pen. Okay, so it says show that this line, so we have two equations, and it says to show that they're perpendicular. So I start with one of them. I have 3x minus 6y is equal to negative 12. What form is this in? This is in standard form. But first thing I want to do is I want to get my x. I'm solving for y. That's all you have to really think about. I'm going to solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. And I get minus 3x minus 12. And then I'm going to divide both sides by negative 6. And I end up, these cancel, so I get y is equal to, and then negative 3 over negative 6 is positive 1/2 x, and then negative 12 divided by negative 6 is plus 2. So there's one equation, and I know the slope for this one is equal to 1/2. So what should the slope of the other one be? I'm not going to answer it yet. I want you to think about it. I'll answer, I promise I'll answer before we're done. And then we'll do the same thing to the other side. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides, and I get 2x is equal to negative 2, divide both sides by 2, and I get x is equal to negative 1. Well, that is definitely not me solving for y, is it? Because there is no y. So what do we do? Well, first of all, you have to know how x equals negative 1 graphs. So, I mean, you don't have to know this, but it's helpful as far as at least in me explaining to you. So now here's how the best way I can explain it. It's a line, and if we were to plug in numbers, right? So let's say I say, well, what is x when y equals 1? Well, this equation doesn't have any y in it, right? All I know is that x is equal to negative 1. So here's negative 1. X is equal to negative 1. What is x equal to when y is 2? Well, it's still equal to negative 1. And it doesn't really matter what number I ask what y is. It's always going to be x equals negative 1. So notice what this is a vertical line at x equals minus 1, because every point is x equals minus 1. And what's the slope of this? So the slope of this is actually undefined. Okay? Because if I do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, it doesn't matter which y's I pick. I'll pick y equals 3, and I'll pick minus 1 over, here's the important part, the x is actually minus 1 minus minus 1, which is minus 1 plus minus 1 plus 1. So I get 2, or whatever number it is, over 0, which again proves that it's undefined. So these are not perpendicular to each other. Absolutely not. Not perpendicular. So what would be perpendicular? Perpendicular. Okay, so what would be perpendicular? So if I wanted a line perpendicular to this line, it would be the slope of the other line that was perpendicular would have to be -2/1 or -2. The slope of the line perpendicular to x equals -1, I think it's best if I draw it because it would be a horizontal line, right? And any horizontal line is y equals some value. And here, y equals 2. And the slope of a horizontal line is 0. So if I want, and actually, if I flip this upside down, right, and make it negative, it would be -0/2, which is the same as 0. So the line perpendicular to the undefined here would be 0. The slope of the line perpendicular. Hopefully you understand what I did here. And of course, you're always welcome to ask me any questions. Okay, let's continue on. Oh, I know why I know I'm using the pen wrong. Let me use this, that way I don't have to keep erasing. Okay, again, determine whether two lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So I'm going to do really exactly the same thing. I'm going to solve for y. So let's solve this for y. I would start by subtracting 3x from both sides. So I would have -y is equal to -3x plus 4. That's really all I have to do because now, oh no, I have -y. So I'm going to multiply or divide, it doesn't matter. You get the same result, both sides by -1. And that would give me y is equal to 3x minus 4. Okay, so I have my first equation, and I know my slope is equal to 3. Let's do it for the next one. So we have, I'm going to subtract x from both sides. That gives me 3y equals -x plus 7. And then I'm going to divide everything by 3. So I get y is equal to, and -x/3 is really the same as -1/3 times x plus 7/3. So now I have my slope is equal to -1/3. Well, if the first m is equal to 3 and the second m is equal to -1/3, how do you check this? Well, we know they're not parallel because they would have to be the same. If they're perpendicular, then m, I'll call this m1, I'll call this m2. So m1 times m2 would be equal to 3 times -1/3, which equals -1, check. Or I could say, I could have said before I even did the second one that the slope of the line perpendicular to this one would be negative and then the reciprocal, which is what it is. So we know it is, these two lines are perpendicular to each other. All right, next. Yeah, that's working much better. Okay, so find the equation of the line parallel to the line, to this line that passes through this point. So let's do that first, and then we'll write it in all the different forms that they want. I'm actually going to put another slide in here because I have a very good feeling that we're going to need some more space. So let me just start. So the first thing I want to do is I want to find the slope, right? So I'm going to solve for y. I get 4y. I'm subtracting 2x from both sides. So I get minus 2x plus 1, right? Divide everything by 4, which gives me, these cancel, and I get y equals, and then negative 2/4 is really the same as negative 1/2 times x plus 1/4. And now I know that my slope is equal to negative 1/2, which is what I need, okay? Because now I want to find the equation of the line parallel to that line. Well, when something's parallel, what does that mean? It means it has the same slope. So I'm going to show you a really easy way to do this. I'm just trying to decide if I want to start on my new page. I think I want to, I'll start here. So now I have the slope and I have a point. So given that I have a slope and a point, what do you think is the best thing for me to use first? It would be point slope, right? So point slope is, again, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I know y1 because it's right here. This is the point that we're talking about. So I have y minus 5, which is really the same as plus 5, equals, and since it's supposed to be parallel, we use the same slope. And we have x minus x1, which is 3. So now I've done first point slope. Okay. Then, hold on. Get a new page. So I'm going to just grab this piece. And let's put it into our blank. And then what we're going to do next is turn it into slope intercept. Okay. Okay, so we start with this. This is in point slope. Next, I'm going to put it in slope intercept. Anytime I want to put something in slope intercept, what I'm going to do is solve for y. So I have, let's just start first by distributing on the other side. So this is negative 1/2 x. And then negative 1/2 times negative 3 is plus 3/2. I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides, which gives me y equals negative 1/2 times x plus 3/2 minus, I have to get a common denominator. This is 10/2 is the same as 5. So we get y equals negative 1/2 x. And then 3 minus 10 is negative 7, so minus 7/2. So now, if you notice, it is in slope intercept. Okay? And then the last thing we need to do is turn it into standard form. Now remember, standard form only had integers, and we have a lot of fractions here. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get all my x's and y's on the same side, because standard form, remember, is ax plus by equals c. So I'm going to, here, I'll just do it out. So I start with this, and I'm going to add this 1/2 x to both sides. So I have 1/2 x plus y is equal to -7/2. I can't have fractions, only integers for a, b, and c. So I'm going to multiply everything by 2. And here it just happens to be that 2 is the common denominator. But if it's not, you want to find your least common denominator and then multiply both sides by that. Because this is going to distribute, and we're going to get 2 times 1/2 x plus 2 times y is equal to, and we can cancel this with this and get -7. And then 2 times 1/2, these cancel, and I end up with x plus 2y equals -7. And that is my equation in standard form. So I've done standard form, slope intercept, and point slope. Usually point slope will be the easiest when you're doing these problems. I mean, depending on how it's given, but in most cases, it will be. All right. Well, we didn't need that. Let's delete it. And let's do another example. So find the equation of the line parallel and perpendicular to this line and passing through this point. Actually, I don't know. Let's just do it in point slope. I don't think we need to do it in all the different forms. I think that one time was good enough. So let's do this. Let's start off with y equals 2/5 x plus 2/5. So my slope here is 2/5. And it's coming from here, not from the other place. That's my y-intercept, right? And I know it's passing through that point. So I have the slope and I have the point. Again, the easiest thing to do is put it into point slope form. So the parallel line in point slope is y minus, and remember this is x1 comma y1. So -6 is equal to m. Here, let me write. Y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. So y minus 6 is equal to m 2/5, because this is the parallel one, times x minus -1 or +1. And that's it. If I want to find the point perpendicular, I would have the same thing, right? It's the same point. So y minus 6 equals, but now my slope has to change. My new slope, which is perpendicular, is equal to the negative reciprocal. So the opposite, whatever you want to call it, negative reciprocal, opposite. So all I have to do is change the slope, because they're both passing through that same point. I don't have to change anything else. So that's why point slope is actually really nice. Okay. And from here, if you want to change it into slope intercept, you solve for y. And then if you want to change into standard form, just get the x's and y's on the same side and the constant on the other. I think that that should be clear enough. If it's not, let me know and I'll be happy to either help or make another recording. Okay, so now we have find the equation of the line parallel to this line y equals 19 that passes through this point. So the best way I can show you is y equals 19. Remember we said, well, first of all, if we have y equals mx plus b, this one's a little easier to explain than the x one. I have this part is gone, isn't it? So that must mean my slope is equal to 0 and my y-intercept is equal to 19, right? So let's say this is 19. And that means I have a line with a slope of 0, which is horizontal. And so I need to find a line parallel to that. Well, it's passing through the point -3, 8. Now let's just call this 8. So it's passing through that point. But if it's parallel, it's also going to go horizontally, right? So I don't really need much of anything here. I can just say that the line parallel to y equals 19 is y equals 8. It's really just the y value. And if it was x equals something and I wanted a line parallel, I would just say x equals -3. And again, if I wanted perpendicular, I would just say that the line perpendicular to y equals 19 is going to be a line that is vertical, right? And then okay, so let's just do it while I have it here. So if it was find the equation of the line perpendicular to y equals 19, perpendicular to y equals 19. And it has to pass through this point here, remember? So it's going to be a vertical line. And that means it's going to be x equals, and of course, it's going to be x equals -3 because it's got to pass through that point. So hopefully that kind of gives you enough information to understand parallel and perpendicular and be able to do your homework. Thank you for watching, and I will talk to you soon.